Hey guys,
Hello, everyone.
Brian Davis and Denny Sipley here, founders of Spark Rental. I hope you guys are doing well on this Tuesday. So we have a super contentious topic for you today. It's our favorite type of topic, gets everyone all riled up. Last week we had Abby Golhar on, who from Think Realty, and he talked us through all kinds of good stuff about how to scale into commercial real estate and beyond, expensive mistakes. Today, we are getting into, can landlords require their tenants to be vaccinated against COVID-19? And then, we'll also talk, should they? Because those are two different questions, can they and should they? So Denny is our resident legal expert here. Denny, talk us through some of the legal tangles around this.
Just a full disclosure there, I'm not an attorney at all. Well, eventually this was going to come home to the landlords.
Of course.
And it started with a Miami landlord. He has like 1,200 units, and he decided that at first he was going to not renew anybody that unless they could prove that they were vaccinated. And I believe he even started not renting unless somebody would give them their proof of vaccination. So as a result, the Department of Health in Florida now will issue $5,000 fines to businesses, government entities, and educational institutions that require proof of vaccination. Now, landlords aren't always considered a business. So if you're just a mom and pop and you own a few properties, you don't have it in an LLC, you're not a business. You're just an investor. Not just, you're an investor. You're never just an investor. So the problem here is, so can a landlord require a tenant to be vaccinated? Well, this is not going to be one of those, oh, yes, or no. There is definitely a big gray area here. But when we rent an apartment out to somebody, we give them quiet enjoyment. And I'm sure you've heard that if you've been in this business long enough. And that means that they have the ability, provided they're paying their rent and everything, to be able to live in their property the way they want to live in their property. So with that being said, that probably wouldn't stand up, I believe, and we were going to be court cases, but I don't think personally that it's going to stand up in courts. I think that or the forcing of vaccinations is going to stand up in courts because there's too many things against it. The other thing is, so your tenant says, no, I don't have a vaccination, and you decide you want to evict him. Well, if it's not in your lease, on what?
It's not a lease violation.
Right. So what terms are you evicting on? So there's so many different nuances in this. The other thing is you could be called, it could be called under discrimination. FHA could get into this eventually because there's disability laws and everything else. So you got to be really, really careful on how you approach this if you're one of those landlords that chooses to force this issue. Here's my resident legal assistant. Sorry.
There you go. For those of you listening, Denny's dog just wandered right up to the camera and started licking her ear.
Sorry, guys. I'm going to just move them. Okay.
Now, what about non-renewing tenants who are not vaccinated? If you are a landlord who is trying to not rent to people who aren't vaccinated for some reason, could you non-renew tenants who are not vaccinated?
Well, I mean, technically, you can non-renew anyone, depending on your state, because there's, I think, New Jersey where their non-renewal statutes are a little crazy. And
there are some cities too. Yeah, there are some cities that call it no-cause evictions, which is a total misnomer designed for political reasons. But yeah, there are some cities that don't allow that either.
Right.
But like you said, you can theoretically non-renew a tenant just because you want to. I mean,
right.
For any reason.
Now, if you were to go to somebody and say, I was wondering if you're vaccinated, can I see your vaccination card? And they say, no, I'm not. And then all of a sudden you're evicting them. I would be very, very careful Very,
Yeah,
very.
that's asking to be challenged in court.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You know, and one of the things we were talking about in the beginning was how, you know, tenants are not they're basically kind of a customer. They're not employees. So I know right now there are a lot of companies forcing employees to either get their COVID shots or, you know, be booted. But it's not the same way with a tenant. So we have to proceed a whole lot differently for several reasons. Because, you know, like this landlord in Florida, I mean, this woman filed a case against him, and there's, you know, you could get fined, who knows, because there are no definitive statutes around any of this right now. There are a few in New York, so be careful if you're investing in New York.
You should be careful investing in New York in general. Very anti-landlord state.
And some of the other tenant-friendly states, and I'm going to put a link in. We have a map and a article on what those are.
Anti-landlord
those are going to be
states
hard.
and anti-landlord cities. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Now, what about the legality of a landlord asking a tenant for proof of vaccination? Is that legal?
Again, we're in a gray area here. You can ask, and they can give or not. But if they decide not to, at that point, I don't know. And either, you know, this is going to come down to precedents being set by court cases.
Right.
But I would believe overall that there's just so many different things. And I know people have cited HIPAA, but it doesn't necessarily fall under that. But there are disability laws where people, you know, maybe can't get it for whatever reason. So does this fall under ADA laws? I mean, there's so many different gray areas. So, you know, be careful so that you don't get sued.
Right. And it does seem like a privacy violation if a landlord were to ask a tenant for proof of vaccination. Although, you know, so you said that businesses can't ask customers for proof of vaccination, but don't some businesses do that? Like cruise ships, for example, don't they ask customers for proof of vaccination before allowing them onto the cruise ship?
Yeah, depending on where you're going, I guess. You know, it depends. There's so many variables, but again, that's not your living area. You know, you're going on vacation where you're signing on again for this quiet enjoyment. So
Right.
you rent, and as long as you're not breaching your lease, and you know, and again, I'm sure we're going to see eventually some of these landlords come up with putting in their lease that you, in order to rent, you must be COVID vaccinated.
And then I'm sure there'll be court
going to
cases
see
that follow that up, you know, as it's challenged in court. Yeah.
And you know what? There are lawyers chomping at the bit for these cases.
Oh, sure. They
So,
get famous.
yeah.
I'm sure they want the press of these sorts of cases.
Absolutely.
All right. So what should landlords do? Like, how should landlords approach trying to keep their buildings COVID free?
Well, I mean, the normal, you want to make sure that if you have common areas, if you're even in a small duplex, like you in a small duplex and you have those common areas where the mailbox is or wherever, that you're making sure that it's clean, and not only making sure that it's clean, but that you have not proof, like you don't take a picture of yourself cleaning your common areas, but you want to show the faith that you are doing this. And places like laundry rooms and stuff like that, just so that you're making sure that you're doing your part so that you can stay out of this hot water mess that's going to probably evolve. The other thing is you want to check with your insurance company, because that's another area that they probably might be offering protection against COVID-related lawsuits and whatnot. So check with
for an extra premium, I'm sure.
Oh, of course, of course.
Right.
Everybody's going to capitalize on this. That's for sure. You want to keep in mind that if you are somebody who decides to require a vaccination of your tenants, you need to know that if there's any issues with disability or religion or any other valid category of exception, you have to accept that. And going against that, you're putting yourself in big hot water.
And
Fine.
that sounds difficult to prove, though, right? On the part of the tenant. So, I mean, a tenant could come to you and say that they have a religious objection to getting vaccinated, for example. And how can you, as a landlord, disprove that? I mean, you can't really disprove that.
Yeah,
So, I mean, it's almost like an infallible argument that they can make. Which is again, why Denny and I are saying you probably can't get away with these sorts of policies in the first place as a landlord.
well, you have your anti-vax groups that and this is everybody's got their thing, but they don't vaccinate their children for whatever reason, and it's their belief. So I mean, there's so many different gray areas in here, and not just religious or any of these other areas, but how do they make sure that you have these things in place? I don't know, but a landlord has to more or less accept what you give them, and if you don't, anything can end up in court, and then you'll fight it out there. But
Right. So that's really the problem with even trying to require vaccinations from your tenants. I mean, first, it's unclear whether you can even legally insist on asking for proof of vaccination. Second, you can be sued by tenants. Third, they can claim a religious exemption and claim discrimination on that stance, and you can't really disprove that. So, I mean, it's almost like a carte blanche that they can play that card anytime. And how are you going to defend against that? You can't.
It's kind of like fair housing. You get caught, maybe it's something very subtle that you did, but somebody is calling you on it as being discriminatory. And
Yeah. I mean, we know of landlords and property managers who in a multifamily space, as a complex, and there are different buildings, they made an effort to try to put the families with young children, in the same building, because kids are loud and messy and disruptive, and they get all kinds of noise complaints from tenants who don't have children. But the problem, when you do that, that is discrimination based on familial status. So you can't put tenants with young children all in the same building. It's discrimination by fair housing laws. Despite all the complaints you get from other tenants, you can't make them happy. So yeah, you have to be really careful with this stuff.
I think you just have to kind of tread very, very lightly. I mean, because truth be told, I mean, if you have a larger, apartment community or something like that, you're going to have a few people, if you only have, I don't say only, but if you have a smaller triplex or duplex, the chances are that you're not going to have to, are you really going to push this issue? But, there are big property management companies where this issue is in their face. And it's not only just because of their beliefs. It also is because there are some tenants that are saying, how do we know we're safe here? And then it leaves you open for a lawsuit because, God forbid, that tenant get COVID. And then there you go. You have it's like you have a lawsuit over here and a lawsuit over here. Damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah, because ultimately you've got people out there who are super gung-ho vaccine evangelists who think that everyone should get vaccinated no matter what. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have total anti-vaxxers who would rather die of COVID than get vaccinated, right? So, on these two extremes, you're not going to make everyone happy. Don't try to make everybody happy. It's a losing game. What you can do is, if you do manage a larger community and if you do want to host community functions, do it outside, right? Because your chance of spread outdoors is way, way lower than indoors. And if you don't feel comfortable hosting community functions, then wait till the spring.
Right. I mean, there's some smart things that you can do. Like if you have a community room, like that, you just reminded me of that. If you have a community room, you probably don't want to use that for parties right now, just to be on the safe side. But if you do, then you take the extra precautions again by cleaning and sanitizing. So, I mean, it's a very gray area. We have a question. How about landlords that don't want to ask for that? Could the government make us? Oh yeah, the government can do pretty much what they want at this point. We're seeing that. I mean, just making it, forcing companies to force their employees right now is, this
that's
is
being challenged in courts too.
you'll hear from me. I don't agree with it. And, but the government can do what the government's going to do until we all make a stand, I guess.
Yeah. So, bottom line, you probably can't insist on your tenants getting vaccinated. So, you probably don't want to be the case study in going to court over this. So don't. Yeah. I wouldn't be that person who tries to insist on it.
Of all the places, Florida, where it's, been one of those places of discussion.
That's very gently put there, Denny.
Yeah, wasn't it? Was politically correct. That is where this landlord of 1,200 units decides, I'm going to put this through. I'm going to make everybody get vaccinated. So
right, because Florida actually did pass a law specifically banning businesses from requiring customers to show proof of vaccination. So Florida actually has laws on the books about this, unlike most of the U.S. So, Denny, any final thoughts about landlords and trying to require their tenants to be vaccinated?
Well, I know it's a hot topic. I've seen the Facebook posts about it.
And oh yeah, it's vicious out there.
Oh, well, everybody has an opinion, and it's okay to have an opinion, but you operate a business. So the idea is to make money, and you don't want to be putting yourself in areas and positions where you're going to lose money. So be careful.
Yeah, and you don't want to be sued.
Right. Well, that's, big time.
All right, guys. On that note, we will see you next Tuesday, same time, same place, our Facebook group, 2 p.m. Eastern. And in the meantime, let us know what you want to hear about. We'll see you next Tuesday. Have a great week.
Bye-bye.